Good afternoon. Today I'll be going over the first 15 questions of the AP World exam. Feel free to pause the video whenever needed, and let's get started. For the first 1 to 3 questions, it's based on this little excerpt. Take a minute to read this, and let's move on. Invoked in the ritual curse in the treaty most strongly support which of the following statement about ancient Mesopotamia? The correct answer is C. Maintaining and expanding agricultural production was seen as a core task of governments. So if you read the article, the treaty is between two governments, and all it talks about is agriculture. Question 2. A historian would most likely use this passage in the treaty to illustrate which of the following? The correct answer is A. The precarious nature of early civilizations' relationship to their physical environment. And the article explicitly talks about how it's two treaties between two different governments, and it's mainly about their relationship with their physical environment, which involves or evolves around agriculture. Moving on to number 3. Which of the following was an important long-term effect of the expansion of the Assyrian Empire? So this question is not predominantly based on the article, but rather on contextualization and prior knowledge. And the answer to this is D, the establishment of Jewish diaspora communities as a result of Assyrian military conquest. Now moving on to questions 4 through 6, it's based on this article. Take a brief moment to read this article before I continue. Moving on to question 4. Compared to the regulations in the excerpt, Buddhist practices concerning gender roles in the period 600 CE to 600 BCE differs in that the answer is the answer is B, offered women and men the possibility of monastic life as an alternative to marriage. If you read the article carefully, it's very explicit within the article. And let's move on to question 5. The views expressed in the excerpt are best seen as evidence of which of the following immoral in society. Question 5, the correct answer to question 5 is A, the persistence of patriarchy. And this question can be answered through the skills, continuities, and changes over time and contextualization. Moving on to question 6. Which of the following changes to Mauryan religious policy occurred under Chandragupta grandson, Emperor Asoka? So the correct answer is C. Once again, this is a skill of continuities and changes over time. The promotion of Buddhist teachings through etiquettes of rulers. Moving on to questions 6 through 9. Well, 7 through 9. Take a moment to read this passage. Now to answer question 7. According to the passage, Xunzi was advocating an approach of governance that most clearly reflect the principles of. For question 7, the correct answer is C, Confucianism. This question also involves a bit of prior knowledge, and if you remember anything from the early Chinese dynasties and early Chinese civilizations, you can eliminate you can eliminate B and D, and you'll be left with A and C. And if you read the article carefully, it most likely reflects the principles of Confucianism. Number 8, Xunzi's idealized vision of Chinese society in the passage differs most strongly from the social structure of which of the following? For question 8, the answer is B, Hindu society in South Asia during the Gupta Empire. So if we know anything about the social structures of China, it's mainly deriving from neighboring regions such as India, where the Hindu society in South Asia during the Gupta Empire, and it's also where Buddhism derived from, initially migrated into the Chinese society. Moving on to question 9. Ideas similar to and to those expressed in the passage have directly contributed to the development of which of the following aspect of later Chinese imperial history? The correct answer to this is D. The practice of recruiting capable bureaucrats on the basis of educational achievements rather than their noble birth. This is where civil service exams comes into play, and um it talks about merit rather than being being given the right to being given the rights to a higher giving the rights to like greater social mobility just because you you were born into a family that had um relatively greater wealth than the average person. Well, it expands opportunity into the commoners and peasants of that time. Moving on to 10 through 12, questions 10 through 12. Take a moment to interpret the graph. And for question 10, which of the following best explains the overall demographic trends shown in the chart? The, the answer to this is D, invasions by Germanic and Central Asian people. This graph is very explicit. Now moving on to question 11. Which of the following best describes the Roman response to the trend shown on the chart? So if you can't tell what the response is based on this graph, and you have to base your prior knowledge on the time period given. The answer to this is A, shifting power and resources to the east, eventually resulting in the creation of the Byzantine Empire. Moving on to question 12. Which of the following emerged in Western Europe after 500 CE in large part as a reaction to the changes illustrated by the chart? For question 12, the answer is B, the binding of peasants to land as part of the developmental of the feudal society. So we're talking about the early onset of the Middle Ages. Moving on to question 13 through 15. Take a moment to read this graph, and there's part 2 to this graph. It's a total separate graph. All right, now let's go on to question 13. Which of the following conclusions is best supported by the data in table 1? The correct answer is D. Long-distance trade routes were active during the early Tang period, even as most trade in China remained local. The process to getting this answer is very explicit within the data. If you look at the numbers, you can see how trade continues to grow, and while other periods um remained stagnant, during this time period, the trade relatively grew compared to other time periods. And let's move on to question 14. A historian researching the economics history of Eurasia in the periods circa 600 to 1450 CE will most likely find the two tables useful as a source of information about which of the following. The answer to question 14 is C, the geographic extent of the monetization of Eurasian economy. So the graph, while both tables show the relative trade activities during this period. Hence, it's all about the geographic extent of the monetization of Eurasian economies. For question 15, the data presented in the table best support which of the following comparative statement about Tang China and Viking England? So for question 15, the answer is D. Coinage was seen as a useful meaning of storing value in both Tang China and Viking England. And if we see how both um, both places use coins as a form of currency, hence the answer. The answer D, coinage was seen as a useful means of storing value in both Tang China and Viking England, shows similarities based on the graph. And the skill utilized in this question is comparison and overall just comparing and contrasting two different sources. And that's it for this session. Thank you for watching and good luck on tomorrow's test.